No, we don't have to do it. The distinguished visitors are on the stage.
So he said you can go whenever
Here
you
we
want.
go. It's 59.
All right.
Okay, it's 6 o'clock. Good evening. How y'all doing? Happy Hump Day. Welcome to Christopher Newport University, and thanks to all of you for joining us tonight for this significant and important event, the 94th District Debate. And Quentin just told me that the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal are watching the stream. So I wasn't nervous up until about 30 seconds ago. So my name is Bob McKenna. I'm President and CEO of the Virginia Peninsula Chamber of Commerce. And this event represents a somewhat brand new partnership between the Virginia Peninsula Chamber of Commerce and the Judy Ford Wason Center at Christopher Newport University. Cox, Virginia is tonight's presenting sponsor, and we appreciate their efforts to support this event and continuing civil discourse. And speaking of civil discourse, after the initial applause when the candidates enter the stage, we would like you to hold all applause until the end of the event. Now I would like to introduce and hand it over to my co-moderator and friend, Dr. Quentin Kidd.
Thank you, Bob, and welcome everybody. I'm going to walk through the rules, background of the debate before we invite the candidates on the stage. This is the only debate between two of the three candidates for the 94th House District. This race is a marquee race across the Commonwealth. It's drawing national attention because, as we all remember, 2 years ago, these two same candidates ran against each other, and the end result was a tie. And the winner, David Yancey's name was drawn from a bowl on national television at the Capitol building in Richmond. And so here we are again for a rematch. Let me talk about the rules here, and then we'll invite the two candidates to campus. The speaker who goes first was chosen by a coin toss. Each candidate will be, a question will be addressed to one of the candidates. That candidate will have 3 minutes to answer, 2 minutes to answer the question. The person who is second then gets 2 minutes to respond to that. And then if there is some follow-up, if Bob or I have a follow-up to that answer, whoever that follow-up is addressed to will get 30 seconds to respond to that follow-up. They'll each get 3 minutes of opening statements, and they'll each get 3 minutes of closing statements. The person who goes first with the opening statement will go first with the closing statement, so that the person who went second with the opening statement gets the last word, if that makes sense. It makes sense as I have it written here. So the two candidates are David Yancey, who is running for re-election. We all know who he is, running for re-election for the House of Delegates, and Shelly Simonds, a current member of the Newport News School Board. Let's welcome them both on stage. You both. Ms. Simonds won the coin toss, so she will go first with opening statements, 3-minute opening statement. Mr. Yancey will go next with an opening statement, and then we'll go with a question to Shelly Simonds first. So, opening statement.
Thank you so much to CNU and the Chamber for hosting this debate. I am running for the Virginia House of Delegates because I love serving my community, getting to know our needs, bringing people together to find solutions to benefit Newport News. I serve on the school board and also as chair of the board for our Regional Career and Technical Center, New Horizons. I'm also a former teacher, and education policy really is my passion. I believe the citizens of Newport News are looking for change this election. I have a positive vision for our city that I'm really excited to share with everybody here tonight. We have so many natural advantages in our city to be proud of, and we need leadership that will promote and support our public schools, our ports, our shipbuilding industry, our growing technology and healthcare sectors. We need to do a better job leveraging these assets to help our community grow. Our first, most precious asset, of course, is our people. We are lucky to have great opportunities for higher learning and research right here at Christopher Newport University, NASA, and Jefferson Labs. But we need to do more for our youngest students to get them ready for the high-tech jobs of the future. I have been a longtime proponent of STEM education and, of course, the arts. One of my plans as delegate is to require that coding and computer science be taught in all our middle schools in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And to have the best workforce in the region, of course, we have to have access to healthcare for our citizens. I hear about healthcare on the doors every day. I have to tell you, people are afraid. They're afraid of losing insurance coverage if they lose a job. They're afraid of not being able to afford their medications, and they are very worried that Republicans will allow discrimination against people with pre-existing conditions. I have a plan to address the high cost of prescription drug prices with a drug price affordability board. After a period of study, this plan would allow Virginia to place price caps on the cost of essential prescription drugs. I have the legislation and the fiscal analysis from a friend of mine who's a delegate in Maryland, and I will be ready to present that legislation on day one when elected. I think solutions like this and many innovations to improve the lives of people in the Commonwealth are being held back by special interests in Richmond. So the choice this November is really going to be between innovation and stagnation. Do we want movement and action on education funding, action on gun safety, action on healthcare and clean energy? This is the choice our citizens will make when they come out to vote and make their voices heard on November 5th.
Thank you. Mr. Yancey, opening statement.
Thank you. It's a great honor and a pleasure to be here this evening, and thank you all for coming here tonight. And Shelly, of course, it's wonderful to have an opportunity to share a stage with you yet again. I would just say to you this election really was summed up quite well in the last two articles in the most recent Daily Press. In today's op-ed piece, it said that the district had been redrawn to help favor a Democrat to win. And it had commented about people who had moved into the district, or people who chose to stay in the district. And the thing is about in staying in this district, with the odds stacked against me, even with what the Daily Press wrote, it is about fighting for my hometown. I grew up here, I'm from here, my friends are here, my loved ones live here, my home is here. So I'm fighting for Newport News. And here are the results of what I've been fighting for. As chairman of transportation, I promised you when I got elected in 2011, we would get 64 widened on the peninsula. 64 is being widened on the peninsula. We needed a brand new Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel. In just a few short years, we're gonna have a brand new Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel. $5 billion in new transportation projects. But we're also investing in our community. Newport News Shipyard has a new foundry which has helped create 5,000 new jobs just this year alone. Yes, Gene, it's true. And enough work for an entire generation with 2 aircraft carriers and 2 submarines at the same time. But it's more than just that. It's education. Shelly and I agree. We've got to be able to find more money coming on the heels of the Great Recession to get more money into the classrooms. But we also have to be able to get more money to our school teachers. And I'm proud that I was able to help support that in this year's budget. In this year, we fought for a lot of things, but some of the things we fought for have been healthcare. And I did vote to pass a responsible version of Medicaid so that 400,000 people in Virginia can have access to quality healthcare. And I serve on the Health Insurance Reform Commission. This is the commission that looks for ways and innovative ways to bring down the cost of healthcare. And this year we did address some of those issues, including coupons that can be used towards bringing down the cost of prescriptions. And if I get to go back to Richmond, one of the bills that I'm going to do to fight the insurance companies, like I did working with Hampton University, so that we can have proton therapy opportunities for cancer treatment, is to be able to go to the insurance companies and say, we've got to help people when they pay their bills by not going after their credit rating when they're having struggles to be able to pay for their health insurance. There's a lot of things that we have to fight for. There's a lot of things we're going to continue to fight for. But one of the things that I was very proud to fight for this year, and one of the things I will fight for next year and introduce legislation on, is the Equal Rights Amendment. I broke with my party. I fought for the ERA. I voted for the ERA, and I'll fight again because I believe in opportunity. And that same kind of opportunity are those young children that I coach in high school rugby. They come from some of our toughest neighborhoods. They're sharing with me the concerns that they have about gun violence. And I've put in bills that go after the illegal trafficking of firearms. But I also know that we have to look at some of these red flag laws and say that there are people that are a danger to themselves and to others, but we have to do it in a responsible way that respects those folks' 4th and 14th Amendment rights to due process, but also says that if you file a false claim against somebody, that we're going to hold you accountable as well. These are the reasonable bipartisan consensus things that I've been working on for the last 8 years, representing you and delivering the results that matter for my district and for my hometown of Newport News. Thank you for having me here tonight.
Well, they've answered all my questions.
Then we're done.
Okay, so you're going to get 2 minutes to answer each question. And at the 2-minute point, Dr. Kidd is timing it. He'll just step in and politely say, thank you, and we'll move to the next question or to the response. So first question, and this is for Ms. Simonds. What one thing about you, either a personal thing or a policy position, do you think voters of the 94th district should know that has not gotten enough attention yet in this election cycle?
Well, I think that being a former teacher is really important. I think we need people up in Richmond who are going to protect education funding. You know, I would say something that a lot of people don't know about me is I was a part-time teacher in 2009. And that was the year Newport News had massive budget cuts and cut all the part-time teachers in Newport News. So my part-time position was cut. I was offered a full-time position, but I was really looking for part-time work. So I felt very personally, very deeply those budget cuts. And the General Assembly has failed to restore funding back to the pre-recession levels. And we need teachers and more women up in the General Assembly to make sure that we never balance the budget of the state of Virginia on the backs of teachers and students again.
Over to you, Mr. Yancey.
So one of the things that some people in this room may know, but not a lot of people know, is like Ms. Simonds, I also work with young people. Specifically, I work with some of the kids in our communities that come from some of the toughest neighborhoods. Many people refer to them as at-risk kids. I call them at-promise kids. They live in parts of our communities that we hear about some of the troubles and the struggles that are going on, like Marshall Courts or Stewart Gardens, for example. Been coaching kids for well over 10 years. But for them, their vision is, who am I? Where am I going? How am I going to get there? And what are the opportunities that are there for me? So it's education funding, certainly. It's making certain that the teachers are being paid well and that we get the salaries up to where they need to be. It's also about their concerns, not just about health insurance, we just talked about a moment ago, but the opportunity, jobs opportunity, educational opportunities, being able to go, whether it's a historical Black college or being able to go to the University of Virginia or right here at CNU. What are my options? How am I going to get there? And to work with these young people to get there, whether they join the military, they start their own business. Where am I going and how am I going to get there? For 10 years, I've worked with them. And for 10 years, I have taken their voice with me to the General Assembly. And much of the legislation that I have introduced is designed to focus on the needs of our community. all of Newport News from one end to the other. And in working with these young people and in listening to what they have to say, in just the 2 minutes, I couldn't even begin to address some of these things. But what's really special is that they're making it. Let me say that again. They're making it.
Thank you, by the way. Speaking to 2
Of course.
minutes. We'll try not to draw too hard a line, but we'll keep.
I understand.
We'll keep the
I
time.
understand.
Okay.
Politicians can go on forever.
So next question goes to you, however. So anyone who lives in this district has had a mailbox full of all of these mailers, right? I think about 65 of them at this point. I'm holding in my hand 2 mailers here, one from the Democratic Party of Virginia and the other from the Republican Party of Virginia. The Democratic flyer says you voted against Medicaid expansion 4 times during the McAuliffe administration. The Republican flyer touts you as being committed to quality health care and points out that you voted to expand Medicaid. Why the change? Why vote against it 4 times and now run on your vote for expanding Medicaid?
Never said I was opposed to Medicaid. What I did say was that we had to find a responsible way to expand Medicaid. In other words, how are we going to pay for it? How are we going to help the people? How are we going to have a consistent, predictable, and stable way to help people? We're talking about 400,000 people, but we're going to have to go out into the community and find those folks. And then as federal government money levels off, we're going to have to be able to pay for that going forward. With the McAuliffe administration, we were not able to get there. With the current administration, we were. Now, here's the difference in governing. In the 2014 session, and I have a copy of it right here, the McAuliffe administration suggested, and if you don't believe me, it's in the 2014 budget. You can go to page 516, line 19 through 21. The director of the Department of Planning and Budget is hereby authorized to transfer appropriations among agencies and programs as needed so as to implement coverage for newly individuals pursuant to the ACA. In other words, we would have given the executive branch the ability to go into the Department of Education, the Department of Health, or any other state agency and pull money out and put it into Medicaid. And that would create a huge hole in our budget, big enough to drive a bus through. What we did was we said we have to find a way forward on being able to find the money and to have the safeguards. One of those ways that we're paying for it are the hospitals. They are actually multi-billion companies that are contributing as part of an agreement that we did on healthcare so that we have a consistent stream of revenues that we can dedicate towards healthcare. It took time. I'll be the first to admit that. But we did it the right way. We did it a responsible way, and we did it in a consensus, bipartisan way, working with this governor so that we could all find a way to help these people and to be able to address this important issue. And let me just say one more thing. In the 2020 budget, this issue is going to come back up again. And I fully intend to vote for it because we found a way to move forward on this important issue.
Ms. Simonds, 2 minutes.
Make no bones about it. My Republican opponent voted 4 times against Medicaid expansion. This would have helped 100,000 people in Virginia, and he voted against health care for these folks. It was clear that it would have paid for itself in savings to Virginia. And by turning away the Medicaid expansion dollars, Republicans allowed our tax money to go to other states to fund healthcare in other parts of the country. So I think that I stand by my ads. You know, you don't have to wait for me to do the right thing. You will know if you elect me to the General Assembly that I will vote for expanded access to healthcare every single time. It won't be a guessing game. And I'm very excited to work on this very important problem of drug price affordability. I'm really excited to present this legislation because we need to find solutions to the increasing cost of healthcare. And we don't need to wait for Washington to solve our problems. We need to do more to look at what other states are doing to control the out of control costs of healthcare.
Thank you for that.
Okay, so the next question goes over to you, Ms. Simonds. So on this flyer right here, the Yancey campaign has claimed that the Newport News schools have the lowest pass rates in reading and math in the Hampton Roads region have test scores below the Virginia statewide average score in every category, and have in recent years ranked in the bottom 15% in the state in both reading and math. All of this while you served on the school board. Do you, as a member of the school board, deserve any responsibility for these things?
I think if you look at the history of standards of learning testing in Virginia, our students were passing all of the SOLs. Before, under the McDonnell administration, they increased the standards for the SOLs. And then, surprise, surprise, all of the challenged schools across Virginia started failing. We have been showing improvement every single year. Our math scores are up this year. We have all of our high schools accredited in Newport News. And you know, educators talk a lot about the whole child. So it's not just teaching to the test, and it's not just reaching over a bar. It's making sure our students have college, career, citizen-ready skills so that they're workforce ready. It's not all about a test. And I'm very proud of the graduation rates that we've achieved in Newport News, 94%, the highest in Hampton Roads. And if anybody questions those graduation rates, I will tell you they are backed up by the same SOL tests that we're getting attacked on. Those tests are verified. Graduation is verified by these tests. So it's tough for students. We've got a rigorous curriculum. We need to make sure that we're not only arming them with a great education, but we have to make sure that they're resilient students who are ready for these rigorous SOL tests. I would really like to see more school counselors in our school system to help teach resiliency and make sure our students are not only passing tests, but that they're great citizens and that they treat each other like a family and that they protect each other. I think it is so important to get more school counselors.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Well, I'm going to begin by saying you're welcome, because in this budget, I was able to help get more school counselors for children, and they are spending more time with children. And let's just let the facts speak for themselves. School scores in the city of Newport News are down. Reading, down. It's the worst in all of Hampton Roads. Math, down. Hampton Roads, Newport News, we're the lowest. And then
That's not right.
the state average, we're lower. I appreciate my opponent's comments, and I certainly appreciate her hard work, but she said July of last year at a school board meeting, I am more focused on running for the House of Delegates. So Hampton has a 100% accreditation rating. Newport News continues to struggle. Now, we've worked very diligently to find the money for schools like Achievable Dream. For the Aviation Academy, but you have schools like Achievable Dream that are doing quite well, and these are some of the challenging schools. In Richmond, I have voted to support bringing down some of the SOLs so that we can teach more towards what the children need to learn. We're trying to do what we can, coming on the heels of the Great Recession, to get more money into the classroom to help the young people and to give them the opportunities. But our schools still continue to struggle.
Thank you, Mr. Yancey. Ms. Simonds, do you want
Yeah,
to
that is simply not true. Our math scores have improved this year. The opposite is false. And to attack our students, you represent this community. You represent Newport News Public Schools. And I'm shocked that on stage that you would continue to attack our students the way that you have done in these mailers.
Thank you for that.
May I?
Yes?
30 more
Yeah.
seconds.
Okay. I'm not attacking schools, children. I'm attacking you and your leadership, Shelly.
Well, it's
Wait, hold
certainly
on,
Thank you all.
to me
hold on. I think I speak for everybody up here.
schools.
Okay. Let's reason together. When I talk to the parents, just like you do, we're both out there door knocking. I saw in Denby. The parents are expressing to me they don't have a lot of confidence. They're worried. They're concerned.
I got to call you on your 30 seconds.
Okay.
To that. Next question for Mr. Yancey. You've put out a mailer. You've put out mailers. I'm holding a couple of them right here that say you broke with your party to stand with women. But the Simonds campaign says that you oppose a woman's right to choose, voted for the transvaginal ultrasound bill, voted for a bill that could ban birth control. Are these claims true? And if not, what are your positions on these issues?
In 8 years of serving in the legislature, I've never introduced any piece of legislation that deals with this issue. My focus has been on jobs, on education, on transportation, on safety, on the needs of the city of Newport News. In working with women here in our community, they've said what we really need help on is the focus to help working moms get back into the workforce as soon as possible. And just this year, I got an award for a breast pump bill to allow for a woman to have a private place and a place of work where she can expel her breast milk and then be able to get right back into work. On some of the legislation that we're talking about, we've had this conversation many times before, but really it's about safety and it's about giving a woman a peace of mind. And so on the issue you had commented about, I might vote against or I might be opposed to contraception. I was a co-patron of a bill that passed and signed into law that allows for 12 months of contraception care. So why in the world would I go back on that? The legislation that I've been focusing on and from hearing from women in our community are the very things that I have been working towards. And the big one, of course, is the Equal Rights Amendment, which I broke with my party on to support this year and one that I'll continue to support next year.
Thank you, Ms. Simonds. 2 minutes.
You know, people aren't going to have to wonder if I'm going to vote for the ERA or if I'm going to support women's health, because I clearly will do those things. You know, I'm pleased that you voted for the insurance companies to cover contraception, but they should have been doing that anyway. Women in Newport News cannot trust my Republican opponent on this issue. He has voted against Planned Parenthood funding for things like mammograms and pap smears. He voted for one of the worst bills in Virginia history that would require women to have an unnecessary transvaginal ultrasound. I mean, can you imagine the legislature voting to have a mandatory invasive exam for men? I don't think they would have voted for that.
Please hold the applause.
So, you know, I think that my opponent, you know, doesn't have a lot of credibility on this issue. He will focus on one moment in time, breastfeeding with this breastfeeding bill. Women's health is about our lifespan. We need access to contraception across the ages. We need access to birth control and pap smears and breast exams, not just after we give birth, but through our whole lives. And I will be consistent to stand up and support women's health care.
Thank you very much. Mr. Yancey, would you like 30 seconds?
Well, on the one that you'd referenced on Planned Parenthood, they were performing that procedure. All we did was bring Virginia law to where it needed to be to give cover. But to the point about standing up and fighting for something, many people said, well, maybe the ERA opens up a back door for potential abortion or so forth, and yet I supported that. And insofar as standing up and fighting for it, on the day of the vote, you were not in Richmond. You say you want to empower people, but you couldn't even drive 1 hour to Richmond to come and fight for it.
Thank you for that. Ms. Simonds, would you like 30 seconds?
I mean, I went to the drawing of lots and sat there in front of, you know, hundreds of news media, and you didn't come to the drawing of lots. So, I mean, I think it's a little strange to say I didn't show up for things. The vote at City Council, it was my bill that was being presented on teacher pay raises that you said I wasn't there, but clearly I was there.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you for
Simons.
that.
All right.
Okay, next goes to Ms. Simons. And this is the last flyer from Dr. Kidd's mailbox.
You can tell we have a bipartisan house because we've gotten everything.
So, Ms. Simons, the Yancey campaign has said you voted to raise student meal prices, cut teacher jobs to increase pay for administrators, and gave the school superintendent a BMW. Are these charges true?
No. Teachers, the superintendent does have a car allowance, and the previous superintendent had the BMW. The current superintendent does also have a fancy car, which for some reason is not a problem, maybe because he's a man. But we were forced to raise meal prices. by the federal government, and it was only by about 10 cents. And in Newport News Public Schools, we've been very concerned about making sure all of our children have access to healthy meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I'm very proud to say this year we are the biggest school division in the state to offer meals at no cost to all of our students. So we're very excited about that.
Thank you. Mr. Yancey?
The issue of the BNW isn't about the current school administrator, it's about the previous school administrator. And the issue here is every person in this room who pays real estate taxes, you had an increase in your real estate taxes to help pay for schools. It was supposed to go into the school, into the classroom, and for teachers. It didn't make it there. It went for administrators. It went for increases in salaries to everybody and everything but. So this year, when we had the 5% teacher pay raise, 3% of that should never have been in question because it was money coming from the state for the teachers. And yet we couldn't get there. So I got telephone calls from school board members. I got telephone calls from administrators saying, would you go down and would you help us? And I sent a letter on behalf of what we've been doing to the city council and to the mayor. I went down to the school board meeting before the city council and said, Mr. Mayor, please give the school teachers this income. The thing is, we could look at it a multitude of ways, but it really goes down to this. You could or you couldn't. And if we examine the things that could have been done, you could have come to Richmond, of course, and say, when the teachers were there and say, I'm advocating for a teacher pay raise. You could have built a consensus. You say you're going to build a consensus in Richmond, but you couldn't build a consensus amongst like-minded people here in Newport News. So you could or you couldn't, but you didn't. And that's the thing. When the moment presented itself to stand up for teachers, of which you say you were one, you did nothing.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Yancey. Ms. Simonds, you have 30 seconds.
We are a very solid school board, and we have unanimously voted for teacher pay raises for 7 years in a row. We are united on the need to pay our teachers more. I really don't know what you're referring to. And by the way, I have gone up to Richmond numerous times to advocate with you for our schools. So I don't know where this attack is coming from.
Over to you for 30.
Well, I know because on those times you did come, you sent me a thank you card for the great work that I'm doing for schools. But this year, you didn't come to advocate for schools. This year, you didn't come to advocate for ERA. The only thing you advocated for in my office was on green energy, and you let somebody else do all the talking. So this issue about teachers, to your point, I agree with you. Hold on a second. I agree with you that you have voted for those budgets. Yes, I agree. But the teachers that I'm hearing from say,
we have to call time on the 30
Okay.
seconds. The next question is going to go to Ms. Simonds. Regardless of which party controls the House of Delegates after the November 5th election, seniority matters in the House. Why would it be better for the voters of the 94th to vote out Mr. Yancey just as he starts to gain some seniority status on committees and replace him with somebody who would have no seniority at all?
We need to get the majority for Democrats in the Virginia House. And right now, Mr. Yancey's presence in the Virginia House is causing us to blocking change. It's blocking change in the Virginia House. And the best example of that, of course, is on gun safety. And I have to say, if my name had been drawn out of that bowl in 2018, outcomes might have been different for gun safety. Those bills that were presented by the governor in the special session that would have banned high-capacity magazines, universal background checks, restrictive protective orders, those things might have passed. So yes, it matters if Democrats have control. Yes, it matters if you come out and vote November 5th, because this is how we make change in Virginia. We need a Democratic majority, and right now, my Republican opponent is standing in the way of change.
All right, thank you for that. Mr. Yancey, 2 minutes.
so I serve as the chairman of the House Transportation Committee, and all of you that drove down here tonight on 64, that was part of what I was able to achieve. And of course, we talked about the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel. The thing about seniority, it's great to say you're a chairman of a committee, or you serve on this committee, you serve on that committee, but it's about the ability to cultivate relationships and build a consensus. So let's just say for conversation's sake, the Democrats do take control of the House. You still have to have somebody that knows how to get it done. You still have to have somebody that knows how to deliver the results. You talked about gun safety. You have to have a person who is willing to step up and fight for it. And I did introduce legislation. I was one of the very first people to introduce legislation in this special session that dealt with the illegal trafficking of firearms. And I worked with our local police. I worked with our local prosecutors. I even worked with the Eastern District of the United States Federal Attorney General's office to be able to craft legislation that would be meaningful to get illegally trafficked guns off our streets. And your response was, it's lip service. But you didn't introduce, you didn't suggest, you didn't propose anything on gun safety. I did co-sponsor, and I am co-sponsoring, I should say, this red flag law. But the key on the red flag law to get guns out of the hands of people that might be a danger to themselves or others, again, it's about making certain that all constitutional rights are protected. Along those lines of gun safety, I'm working with the local community service boards to address some of the challenges of mental illness. These are some serious problems that we have to deal with. So I'm flattered that I'm somehow this one person that's blocking all this opportunity. But when I think of all the bipartisan consensus that I've been able to do over the years on a multitude of opportunities to create for back home in Newport News, that comes from the seniority and that comes from the results I've been able to deliver for my hometown in Newport
Thank you,
News.
Mr. Yancey. Okay, we're not going to this time, Ms. Simons. We're going to move on to the next question, which is similar to this one, but a different perspective, and it's for you, Mr. Yancey. It could very well be the case that Democrats will take the House of Delegates on November 5th. Do you have a response to that? No, I'm just kidding. Why would it be better for the voters of the 94th to send you back if you may be in the minority than your opponent who could be in the majority? So you in the minority or her in the majority? Why is it better for you to be sent back?
It is better for me to be sent back simply because of the results that have been developed for Newport News in collaboration with other Democrats throughout the legislature that I serve with. Now, you're probably saying, well, gosh, that sounds all fine and dandy. But let's look at some of the things that we've been able to craft and to get done. And let's just start with something as generic as transportation. That transportation bill could not have happened had I not found a way to work with Democrats to get them all to agree on what was needed. So they were talking 64, we're talking 95, we're talking the 81 corridor, we're talking the Port of Virginia. I mean, these are important things. There are Democrats in the minority now who I can work with that if they are in the majority, know they can work with me and I can deliver those votes. When you're a freshman delegate, and you may be, or who somebody in the future may be, but when you're a freshman delegate, unfortunately, you don't get a lot of bills to carry. You don't have many opportunities. You can put up all the bills, the committee assignments. Where you are really effective is on those relationships, on those abilities to make things happen, but then also on the right committee assignment. Commerce and labor may not sound a big deal to anybody in this room, but for Newport News Shipyard, it's a huge deal. I'm on the education committee, which is a big deal for back home and for the higher education schools back home. And I'm obviously chairman of House Transportation. I serve as the governor's chairman of the Aerospace Advisory Council, critical for our local airport. I mean, these are the things that matter. These are the ways you get things done. Whether you're in the majority or the minority, when you have the seniority, you can deliver results.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Simons, 2 minutes.
I think it's going to be really important to have change up in Richmond. I think we will have Democrats in charge of these committees. There's a famous committee called the Militia Committee in the House that has unceremoniously killed bills every single year. 72 bills were killed in this committee. So once we change the balance of power and we take back the majority, we're going to be able to get all these gun safety bills out of committee. Once we take the majority, we'll have people like Senator Mamie Locke chairing committees and Delegate Gian Ward chairing committees, and it will make a huge difference for the Commonwealth. There are issues like minimum wage that haven't been able to get out of committee. We will be able to increase minimum wage, and certainly we will be able to pass the ERA.
Thank you. The next question. Go to Ms. Simonds. Virginia has long held its right to work statute up as one of the tenets of a best state in which to have a business. Do you support maintaining Virginia's right to work law? If no, why? And how would repealing it represent a better Virginia? And if yes, why is it important to maintain the right to work statute?
So I think we need to have higher expectations for ourselves in Virginia. You know, it's great that we're best for business, but I want to be best for working families as well. And I think that we really need to look at the balance between corporations and corporate power and workers and the middle class. And we know that the middle class right now is struggling, the middle class is shrinking, and I support repealing right to work because I think that right to work is being used to suppress wages for the middle class. And I'll give you an example. Firefighters have been fighting to try to get more cancers covered with workers' comp. Certain cancers like brain cancer and testicular cancer are not presently covered. And they go up to the General Assembly and they struggle with this every year. If we had better bargaining power for firefighters, they could put those protections right into their contract. When they negotiate contracts, they could put cancer presumptions right in there. So I think it's time. The pendulum has swung way too far toward corporate power, and I think that right to work is going to help the middle class and help increase teacher wages and help workers re-enter the middle class.
Thank you for that. Mr. Yancey, 2 minutes.
Just letting everybody get their applause in. Well, let's start first with the cancer bill in regards to the right to work laws. I'm glad you brought it up because I was a co-patron of that bill along with Delegate Tim Hugo, and we were able to get that bill passed because we do support our firefighters. So you're very welcome, Shelly. I will also tell you this. Right to work laws are very important. And yes, middle-class families are struggling. And part of the reason why we're able to create opportunity in the state of Virginia and be the #1 state to do business in is because we are attracting businesses to come to the Commonwealth of Virginia. And large part of it is because of our right to work laws. Now, I know what you're saying. Okay, I don't believe anything you're saying, David, because you're a Republican. Okay, fair enough. So here's your competition. It's not China, it's not Germany, it's South Carolina, it's Georgia, it's North Carolina, it's Texas. All these states have the same thing that Virginia does. And these states are recruiting like mad against Virginia because they see Virginia as a state that gets all of its opportunities because of the federal treasury and then military opportunities. So if you get rid of the right to work law states, you are going to create an opportunity for those states to come in and grab our businesses and recruit them. So for an example, a few years ago, we tried to change the laws. Actually, we did change the laws in regards to UAV, drone technology. I voted against the bill because I don't think that some of the things that we had to do were quite right, but it passed. The second that bill passed, there were companies from, I'm sorry, it wasn't companies, it was the state of Kentucky and the state of North Carolina that were saying, why are you wasting your time in Virginia? Come on here. The state of Mississippi is the kind of state that is so hyper aggressive on their economic development that they will go to somebody like a Newport News shipyard and they'll say, why are you putting up with this? Why are you looking to these kinds of problems? Why don't you redirect your submarine operation and come down to Mississippi? They do it. You have parts of our country like the Golden Triangle of Mississippi that are so fiercely competitive that they're looking for any edge. And if we lose our right to work laws in the state of Virginia, you will have a situation like Connecticut where businesses say it's better for us to just pick up, relocate, and go somewhere else.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Yancey. Okay, next question, and this goes to Mr. Yancey. Is that right? Okay, so do you believe that Virginia should pass its own minimum wage increase? And if so, what should that amount be and why? Two-part question. What should that amount be and why? And would the increase in minimum wage simply be pushed to the consumer in the way of higher prices for their purchases?
So I think the easiest on the minimum wage is you just have the federal government come with a minimum wage, you benchmark it to inflation, and then it's good for all 50 states. In regards to what you're discussing, though, the concern that I have isn't so much, and it is a concern, but it isn't so much what people would say about, well, I'm going to be paying more maybe for a pizza. The reality of the situation on minimum wage, it really isn't the minimum wage issue. The reality is we have a serious situation coming down the pipeline, and that is this, the kiosk, this, the iPad, this, automation. Because what you're already seeing now are restaurants that have the kiosk. So if you want to go to, say, $15 an hour, okay. But what you're really doing is you are now replacing people with technology. You're eliminating jobs. And then where do these people go for jobs? So the other thing too is when we're looking at those opportunities, we can look at the kind of things that create opportunities in parts of our communities that really need help. You know, one of the things that I helped to pass in Richmond was making every historical Black college and university SWAM certified. So now under their umbrella, they can launch new business opportunities, or they can go out and they can cultivate new opportunities. So when we look at this issue of minimum wage, we can certainly address what it should be or how we should do it, because people do need to make more money. But we have to look at it from a perspective of what do we do to help people not lose their jobs, and what do we do to be able to address the big challenge, which is in a couple of years, automation is going to replace not just restaurant jobs, but maritime jobs, automobile jobs, trucking jobs. This is going to be a very big issue, and one that we have to seriously address.
Thank you, Mr. Yancey. Ms. Simons, over to you. 2 minutes.
Well, I believe in increasing the minimum wage to $10 an hour. And I think it's really important for me to be honest with you about where I stand. And if you elect me as your delegate, you're always going to know where I stand. And many times with my Republican opponent, I don't really know where he stands. I don't really know what kind of increase in minimum wage that he would support. But on things like healthcare, you're going to know exactly where I stand. In terms of minimum wage, I think we have an issue with multinational companies in Virginia paying low wages, and then we have those citizens relying on state and local government services. So if we increase our minimum wage, we're going to have less dependence on taxpayers. And I think that a lot of these multinational corporations aren't paying enough taxes in the state of Virginia. So at least we can get them to pay their workers fairly. And I also think workers, what I'm hearing on the doors from working people in Virginia, that they're very concerned about pre-existing conditions and their health care. When they lose a job, they're worried, how are they going to maintain their health care? And that's something that we really need to focus on in the General Assembly.
Thank you. Next question, Simons. If elected, will you vote in favor of allowing the citizens of Virginia to change the state constitution to have an independent commission draw voting districts?
Yes, I will. And I have always been a supporter of nonpartisan redistricting. And when we had a debate and we shared the stage 2 years ago, my Republican opponent, would not commit to supporting redistricting. I think we have to take the pen out of the hands of politicians. These districts belong to the people, they belong to the citizens, and the citizens should be voting and picking their politicians, not the other way around. I definitely support a nonpartisan commission. There is an amendment that passed last year. I will vote for the amendment when I am elected, so that we can have fair maps and fair representation. We know in Newport News that this is an important issue because we've been gerrymandered. We spent many years with the Denby community, the northern part of our city, sliced and diced to protect the 94th district. And luckily, it has been redrawn, and it is a much better map, more compact, concise, contiguous, and it's much better for our community.
Thank you very much. Mr. Yancey, 2 minutes.
Well, of course it's a better map. It's designed to help a Democrat win. Thank you for agreeing. I appreciate that. So if you want to do independent commission, then you look no further to a state like New Jersey that did independent commission. Their governor, who I don't think anybody in this room would ever think is nonpartisan, the guy's as partisan as you can get. he loaded up this nonpartisan redistricting reform to guarantee certain outcomes, guaranteed ad infinitum for his party in the state of New Jersey. If that's what you want, okay. But here's what we came to doing this year in Richmond. We did pass a redistricting reform because I think we have both agreed that the way these maps are drawn is ridiculous. So what I supported, what I helped to pass, and what will be on next year. And so very close attention to this. What will be voted on next year is not non-district reform from or independent people. It is going to be members of the General Assembly because you can hold them accountable, but you will have an equal number of Republicans and Democrats from both chambers, and they will draw the maps, and you will have the legislative process, the checks and the balances that's in your Constitution. And they will draw what they believe are the best, fair, and most judicious maps to create competitive opportunities. Now, here's the thing. If that vote does not happen next year, it will not be on the state constitution, and you cannot vote for it, and it will revert back to the way things are now. And if you have one party in charge, Republican or Democrat, they will be in charge coming on the heels of the census to draw the new maps. And so you have to ask yourselves, do I go forward with this, or do we watch it die on the vine?
Thank you, Mr. Yancey.
I thought that was interesting because that was a yes or no question. You both took 2 minutes, so thanks. That's fantastic. Okay, so my next question is on infrastructure. So reliable, connected, and low-cost infrastructure, such as electricity, water, transportation, and broadband, enable prosperity and growth. What do you believe is the #1 infrastructure need in your district or region, and how do you intend to address it? So I guess that's for Mr. Yancey.
Okay, well, first things first, we have to continue to fulfill our transportation needs in regards to the widening of 64 to Richmond. And we have to continue to move forward on the New Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel. And then, of course, there are other projects that are going to be built in this area through 2040. So we have to continue to push and push and push. And I'm a member of the Hampton Roads Transportation Accountability Commission, which means your tax dollars, this is how we pay for it. And so when we sign off on something, this is what we do. So we have to continue to look for new ways and new opportunities to get people around. On infrastructure, you spoke about energy. This is something that I think everybody in this room is concerned about. Reliable energy. If you're at the shipyard, you need a consistent, predictable, and stable surge to be able to get the electricity to build those magnificent ships. But I think we also are concerned about opportunities for our environment and what can we do to mitigate that. I've introduced legislation on solar. I've introduced legislation on wind. I've gotten awards for what I've done to be able to get Dominion power to be more agreeable for megawatts, kilowatts use to help alternative energy for people that we represent in our communities. But when you talk about infrastructure, all these things are important for our community, but we are also that beacon for the Commonwealth for these opportunities. So again, as I said earlier before, when you're looking at some of these states, Georgia, Mississippi, they're investing an enormous amount of money into their infrastructure to attract businesses, to attract opportunities, and to have a consistent, predictable, and consistent, happy quality of life for the people that live there. So certainly energy, certainly green energy, obviously road transportation, and then obviously we want to finish off making the Port of Virginia the deepest on the East Coast so that we can also have those opportunities here and not lose out to Savannah, Georgia.
Okay, thanks. Ms. Simonds, 2 minutes.
So I would have to say, first off, school construction is the most important infrastructure issue for me in Newport News and really across Virginia. And I'm really looking forward to working across party lines to find a solution to these crumbling schools across our state. I am very concerned because at this point, there is no plan, none, up in Richmond to rebuild schools. And the average age of our school across the state is over 50 years old. But in terms of energy, I think we're missing the boat on green power in Virginia. We are letting states like North Carolina eat our lunch. And the reason is that we've got too many politicians up in Richmond beholding to Dominion power and not allowing the innovation to come out from small businesses and small-scale solar projects. We need to deregulate our Dominion energy monopoly. We need to change the renewable energy portfolio standards in Virginia to require that power, alternative energy power, be generated in Virginia. Because right now, Dominion is allowed to have green energy and it comes from other states. In order to take advantage of wonderful opportunities like offshore wind, we have to have a predictable energy market right here in Virginia. That means standing up to Virginia Power and requiring that they consume alternative energy that could be produced with offshore wind. If we can get offshore wind off the ground, it could create 10,000 jobs across Virginia. I just had a conversation with the head of the Virginia Shipbuilding Association. They are really excited about offshore wind because it would really help their industry.
Thank you, Ms. Simonds.
Ms. Simons, could you take 4 seconds and just talk about the potential for Jefferson Lab to land the electron ion collider?
I am really excited about that.
And maybe what the General Assembly can do to help us land that project.
You know, I am very supportive of whatever financial contribution the state of Virginia needs in order to make that happen. It would bring thousands of well-paying jobs to Newport News. I think we need, instead of looking at big new housing developments with McMansions, I think the city of Newport News could look at redevelopment tax credits. We have got a lot of beautiful pieces of land where scientists from Jefferson Labs could rebuild and redevelop housing. So I'm all in and really excited to work on that project.
Thank you, Mr. Yancey.
Well, you're welcome for my hard work, because I did deliver the money for Jefferson Labs to be able to compete with New York. And you're also welcome for my plan that I worked on this year with the school superintendent for a plan for new construction in schools in Newport News. And, well, hold a second, because you're welcome for one more thing. You ready? The solar and maritime bills for wind power, working with the different companies to be able to use Newport News Maritime as a facility to be able to put these maritime opportunities for wind power out in the Chesapeake Bay. And one more thing, you talked about small businesses. I've worked with your schools, our schools, Newport News schools, and our local small businesses to be able to create a pipeline of talent to go into this line of work.
Thank you for that. Now, time has flown by, and we're at the end. We have you have 2 minutes for closing statements, and so you'll have your opportunity to respond. Ms. Simons, you go first with closing statements. Mr. Yancey, you go last with closing statements.
Well, I have to start to say that I'm so sorry that the Donald Trump truth effect has made it all the way down to Newport News tonight. I'm baffled by many of the things that have come up. But, you know, I want to end again by thanking CNU so much and the Chamber for hosting this debate. I am running for the House of Delegates because I love serving my community, and I am so excited to continue to work for you. My favorite part of being a candidate is knocking on doors and getting to talk to citizens from across Newport News every day. And the issue I hear about again and again is healthcare. People are worried about paying for their medications. They're worried about losing coverage if they lose their job. They are worried about being discriminated against for having pre-existing conditions. They need a representative they can trust to do the right thing to protect their health care and who will always vote to increase access. My opponent voted against Medicaid expansion 4 times. I'm happy he finally voted for it, but let me tell you this. It's not going to take me 5 tries to get it right on healthcare. You can count on me to do the right thing the first time. In Richmond, you will know exactly where I stand on issues, not just healthcare, but on choice, on clean energy, on gun safety, on criminal justice reform and nonpartisan redistricting, and all the important issues that matter to us here in Newport News. As your delegate, I will represent your interests and your needs, not special interests. In just 2 weeks, we will have a choice at the ballot box. More of the same, or voting to bring change to Richmond. And I hope you join me in voting for real change. We need action in Richmond, not just on healthcare, but on gun safety, This summer, the governor called the General Assembly into special session in the wake of the tragedy at Virginia Beach. And during that session, the General Assembly passed 0 gun safety bills. They showed up, but they didn't do their job. If we went to work and didn't do our jobs, we would be fired. We need to hold our representatives accountable, and Newport News deserves nothing less than bold action. In 2017, this race was decided by a random drawing. The stakes are too high to leave this up to chance again. And I hope that I've earned your support and that you come out and vote on November 5th. Thank you.
Mr. Yancey, closing statements.
Please hold your applause.
You can applaud at the end here.
Well, I want to thank you all for coming out tonight, and I certainly appreciate everyone's interest in this conversation that we're having about the direction of the state of Virginia, not just the next 2 years, but in the future. And I agree, last year was an interesting year. 2 years ago, I should say, was an interesting year. But let's remember this. If you look at the state of Virginia and a lot of the elections that had happened 2 years ago, I should have lost, and I should have lost by a large margin. Yet I had Democrats, Democratic women, independents, libertarians voting for me. And the reason is because I've delivered the results. And the results are around you. The results are here on this campus. And the results have been to get it right. Sometimes it's nice to say, we just did this, but then we got to go back and fix this. But some of the things you heard tonight should give you pause. Get rid of right to work. We're going to raise taxes. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. But we never discuss how we're going to pay for it. Of course not, because you're going to pay for it. It's your tax dollars. You're paying before you even pay your taxes. You have to pay your insurance. You have to pay your mortgage. You have to pay your interest. Then you pay your taxes. And we are still struggling to get out of that 2011 recession that impacted the Commonwealth. But the issue really boils down to this. You all know the story about the goose that lays the golden egg, right? And what happened to the goose that lays the golden egg? We had to get all that gold, so we killed the goose, we split it open, and there was nothing there. The state of Virginia is the #1 state to do business in. It's one of the best states to raise a family in. There are challenges, but we are addressing those challenges, and we're doing it in a bipartisan consensus way. We are looking at what we can do to be innovative and to be better and to be more competitive. But make no mistake, there are other states looking at Virginia and saying, what can we do to pounce on them and to take away what they've got? In the 8 years that I've represented you, I have worked hard, I have been out there, I have been with you, I have fought with you, and I have stood up and I have fought for you. And I will continue to do that again if you send me back to Richmond on Tuesday, November the 8th, because I'm from Newport News, I grew up in Newport News, and I don't need to move out of my home into the district. I'm from here, I'm staying here, and I'm all about Newport News. Thank you.
Please give them a round of applause. Thank you all for attending, and that concludes the debate. Thank you.
Hello.